shut them lights down a little bit right behind you? There's a couple light switches on the wall. And we wanted to go through kind of a timeline of our dad's life here with these 2 dozen slides. So, can we get everybody to, can I get your attention here for a couple minutes, or a half an hour, or whatever it's going to take? Hey, I don't like this anymore than you. We're actually, we love our dad. We had got this picture of him, and here's the other half of the picture. And what we were going to do was to get our Aunt Irene, because she was kind of in on that picture. They took that picture probably, well, it says 1945 or 1946. We wanted to know, Irene, if you could remember the day you took that picture. She can't. We're in trouble. Well, that is Irene up there on the log file on the picture on the right, or on the left there. And my dad was working in the woods with them horses right across the road from where they live now, in the woods there, cutting some pulp, and it says that his sister had brought him down once. And that little box camera, my dad was a camera buff, so he had taken a bunch of pictures, he would develop them, and I don't know, we were wondering how he got that log on his knee. My wife said, I think the other end of that log was on the log pile. It doesn't really fit. That's probably true. But if he piled that pile of wood by hand, he probably did have it rested on that other end of that log pile. Because I couldn't imagine piling that much pulp by hand, even if you had a team of horses. We were going to ask have a little contest and see who would come up with the best caption for the picture. And I asked the lady at the post office, and she said, well, if I had to put a caption, I would say, I don't know how I ever got that log up on my knee, but even the horses there, you see the one is kind of looking at the other one, and they're getting a break, so they're good with that. But anyhow, we thought that would have been a good picture, and everybody that got an invitation, that was on the invitation, and if you didn't get an invitation and you're here, welcome. There's still plenty of food if you want to go back to check it. But anyhow, we're going to go through these pictures. We have picked them out. This is in the last 2 weeks. My brothers and I have probably learned more about our dad than we did in our whole life. So he was bringing up some pictures that we've never seen before. He's got a Valentine's collection around here from the late 20s and early 30s. I think, seriously, he has at least 50 Valentines there that he has saved from schoolmates and family, and it's really cute to look at. But as far as the history, and all the pictures are on this board over here later on if you want to look at some of them. We did a timeline, and even before, my dad was born actually January 29th, so he's been 90 for a few weeks here, but we thought we were going to try to wait for warmer weather. Well, it's a little warmer, not that much, but he was born right here. Most of you know that my dad, this was home all his life. He's been here. We did live down in the Madison area for a number of years, but even then, we always would say that we're going back up home. So, they lived on the farm right across the road here. That's where his parents, my dad's grandfather came up here in 1900 and bought that half acre of land right over where the store is, and they built the store there in 1900. Some accounts are 1901 and some are 1898, but about that time. And then they actually started, the post office was going on up the road there for probably already quite a few years. They actually got the post office over at the store, I think, in 1916, and then that was, my grandfather was the postmaster until 1921, and then his brother, Brady, got married and raised a wife, Beulah. She was the postmaster till 1958, and then Garth took over, and so for all the years. But anyhow, his parents, when they got married in 1916, my dad's parents, they had built the barn down here and were working on the house, and then that's where they lived in the big house. That barn right across the street here was built in 1915, so it's 99 years old. Some old pine boards, and they're still holding up. But anyhow, My dad was born in 1929. He had an older brother and an older sister and one younger sister. And his younger sister Irene is here, and she's actually the one in the other photo there. So good to have you here, Irene, and everyone. So we'll go through this timeline a little bit. You can go ahead, honey, and click on the next one. This is probably the earliest picture of our dad. He's the guy on the far left, and they didn't have baby pictures back in them days, so I don't know why. We got grandkids and we got hundreds of baby pictures, you know, but this is sitting on the front porch of that house down there where Danny lives now. That porch originally was open, and so now it's closed in, but that's my dad and his brother and two sisters. Go ahead and do the next one. That's Dad and Bob and his sister Flora in the back of the house there. There's been a little bit of changes there, but roughly around that time in the late 20s. Go ahead, man. And that's another view of that house from staying on the east side of it. You see they're lining up the cars there, and so yeah, go ahead. That's the surf. One of the first maple syrup was big in my grandfather's life, and of course Dad said the first year they made maple syrup was 1933. This actually wasn't the first arch they had, but one of the first ones, and then eventually they built a building down there and had some bigger cookers. But that's my dad right there. Not sure what his age is, but would be in the 30s, or the late 30s there, mid 30s. So making maple syrup. That's a school. That's a picture in the home down there. I mean, if you went down to Denny's now, and you see that stairway is pretty much there. And again, that's my dad is on the far right. That's Dad. Looks an awful lot like my brother Todd, but in his 16s there, and a picture by the house. Go ahead. That's my dad. We never seen that picture before. We seen the bow. He had that long bow for years when we were kids growing up, and he'd take it out and show it to us. By the time he started having kids, he never had any time for practicing with his bow. So I don't think he's probably used it much since that picture was taken, but still has it. So there's Dad with his box camera, and he did take a lot of pictures and actually developed the film, and said he's still got several rolls of film that he hasn't developed yet, but hard to get the chemicals. But they were the old pictures, so some good pictures there. And go ahead, man. That's my dad on the far left, and my grandpa, and then my dad's brother Bob are on the far right. So standing right in the front yard of that big house down there. And that's him and his two sisters and his brother. So my dad, Aunt Flora, Aunt Irene, and then Uncle Bob. Yeah, my dad went to school in Fence and then in Goodman. So he started across the street here in the Fence School in 1929. Actually in the building, which is the church now, was the Fence School. And then they went up until high school. They went to Goodman, and him and Bob were on the football team. I don't know how long, if it was a year or a couple years. 2 years. So I think from what we understand, I mean, they don't let a lot of information out, but I think Bob had dropped out of school, or however you want to say it, for 2 years until Dad caught up, and then they both went to high school together and graduated together and drove together. I think that was the thing. So to get it was worth doing that to be able to take the car to Goodman. So they were on the football team. Actually, my dad, I think, is the second one from the left in the front, and I think Bob is the third one on the right side. So pretty interesting picture. 32. Is that you or Bob? Yeah, you're, yeah. Like you said. Okay. That's my dad's graduation picture. He graduated in 1941 from Goodman High School. So back in that day, the kids went from here to Goodman. And then after that, they went from here to Florence. But so yeah, nice picture. After my dad graduated, The picture of the invitation with the log pile is between the graduation picture and this picture. My dad has spent a year on the Great Lakes working on a ore boat called the Angela. So there she is. He went on in May, and we just done that last night. He wasn't, like I said, he doesn't give out a lot of information, but he said he got on the boat in Manitowoc in May, and he got off the boat in Cleveland, Ohio in December at the end of the shipping season, and they went all over the Great Lakes from Superior all the way down to Buffalo, New York, hauling iron ore down there and coal back, and take about 10 days for a round trip. And you never knew where your next trip, it was like a dispatcher, and okay, now the boat's going from here to there, here to there. So I guess because this ship actually was a little smaller than the bigger ore boats, he said this one was about 365 feet long, 38 or 35 feet wide. They could actually get into some of them rivers like in Chicago or Milwaukee where they could go up in town a little bit where the bigger boats couldn't, but needless to say, it was a big boat. Half the crew stayed in the front and half stayed in the back, and on a windy day they had a rope. You had to hang on to the rope to walk from one end to the other. I think the mess hall was in the back, and for the time my dad was on there, he was the cook's helper, so peeled a lot of potatoes. He said the old guys on the crew, they said, no thank you, I'll fry my own eggs. Everybody's picky on how they get their eggs fried. I said, well, when I was in the Army, you could have your eggs fried any way they wanted to fry them. So, you didn't have any choice. This is my mom and dad got married in 1949, September 29th in Stevenson, Michigan. So that's a picture of them on their wedding day in a church down in Stevenson. And incidentally, that's where my mother's from. So. This is the first house that they built. It's actually, I don't know if Bill's here, he was here earlier, Bill in Florence Church, right across the road. My dad and his dad and brother built that house, and our family moved in there in 1955. So, house is still there. Looks a little different. You know, this is the house where, and I'm going to let Randy, do you want to say some things here in a minute? You can sure come up here, but you know, when we were putting this thing together and talking about memories, and you know, there's three things like farming and making syrup, and forgot the third one, but disciplines always comes up. And my brother Sam, he said, Tom, do you remember that time when we got that spanking? We got a lot of spanking. And, go figure. You know, you guys have probably, most of you have heard of and my mom and dad each had a little different idea of discipline. So, the fairness doctrine, you know, my mother, she actually was the initiator. I mean, you'd think it was somewhere in Washington, but when one person got a spanking, everybody got a spanking. Basically, she said she didn't have time to figure it out. And she was actually pretty good. And actually, James, I don't know what we thought, you know, we love our mom too, and we bought her a big bouquet of roses there, and I guess James has them right there, and we said, these are for mom, because we love her dearly, and if we gave her that bouquet of roses, we'd be good enough for a couple of hours. Sam said, Tom, you remember when we got that spanking for cutting that tree down? And, you know, right there on the left of that garage, well, we had just moved in there in 55, and we were all pretty young, and this is probably 4 or 5 years later, and Mom was constantly clearing out the woods and making the yard bigger, and there were some trees that she wanted out of there, and there were some she didn't want out of there, and we cut the wrong one down. I don't know where Sam is, and he said, yeah. You remember that? We cut that tree down, and she got mad, and usually she would use a glass water or something, but she was outside, and she said, Bill, you take that axe down there and cut a switch, because you're both getting a spanking. So, I mean, there's nothing worse in the world. I mean, that you're thinking, okay, now, it puts a whole different perspective on trees, but Sam said, you remember we went and cut one of the little dogwood bushes down, you know, they're all leaves. And the stems are real rubbery, they don't grow more than 2 feet tall. And And we got up to the house, and Dad happened to come by, because he must have been coming over from the barn for dinner or something, and he helped us make whistles out of it. You know, make a dog a whistle. So that worked out. Yeah, it was kind of funny. I mean, it went on and on. James said, Mom was so good with that fly swatter, she could hit a fly in midair, and she didn't have time for him to stop and land, and she could catch. I think the picture in my mind is a tennis player. And, when the fly swatter, I mean, the kids and chairs and clothes in the way, but she could reach there and get you with that fly swatter, and she would have made a
fly out of here with the handle.
Yeah. She would have made a good tennis player, but they would have had to get her to hold on to the other end because she held on to the big end. Anyhow, we love her dearly, and Dad's deal was to talk, you know, start asking the dynastic questions and try to figure out what the deal was. And we would say, can't we wait till Dad gets home? Most of you probably didn't want to wait, but to us it was to the advantage that we could get Dad in on the conversation. We did get a couple of spankings from Dad, and we're not talking about them. So I'm going to have Randy. He has the best memories of the time he was 5 years old when we moved into this house. He remembers moving. I was born the year we moved into this house. Up until that time, they lived with my dad's parents in the big house across the road. So, there you go, Randy. Yeah, I was 4 years old when we moved from Grandma and Grandpa's house, and we had two brothers, Terry and Sam. And that new house was beautiful. It's more room for us, and we're very proud of our grandparents that we've only known so far. And I know my mom and dad worked very hard to build that house and did a lot of work on it themselves, plus the help of Grandpa Clarence and my Uncle Bob that helped build that house. And and that was late in '54, around Christmas time, that we moved into that house. And during that time, the dad was full-time farming, and in the spring he was very much involved with maple syrup business, and that was building up and raising a family. So, then he started building up the herd and the farming operation, and shortly after I was born. And he told me one time, every time we have a new baby, we're going to take on 5 more cows. That's more work. But anyway, he was very busy. He said we didn't sell very many calves, so we always raised them, and kept the heifers and their replacement cows, and the steers eventually sold for beef or used them. Then in 1957, he remodeled the upstairs floor in the barn, and that came about because we were hauling hay in up there with a tractor and wagon, and the big wheel on the tractor went through the floor. So that was a massive project undertaking, and we heard some neighbor help, but it all got done, and it's still intact today. 1958, did a major renovation on the barn. Had some contractor Roscoe Carr come in and help gut the floor of the barn and put in new stanchions, gutters, new barn cleaner at that time. And then during that time we were adding machinery, tractors, and equipment for the farming. We were expanding. We started farming more land in the neighboring farms here that the family owned. And then in '65,
Dad started classes at Michigan Tech University. He started there as a land surveyor, and he attended there and finished the class in the spring of 1966. And then during the summer, he started working. He took his first job at Sprigwell Engineering in Madison, and started working down there. And our family moved down there consequently, so that we would be there in time for school to start in the fall of '66. Okay, so Terry's gonna pick it up from there. Also, while I'm up here, I want to say thank you, Dad, for being a good dad, thank you for giving us good values. Thank you for giving us good work ethic. Thank you for providing for us a good home. And we love you. Oh, yeah, it's good to have everybody here. It's good to see all them faces here again. Just a great time today. Here we all looking forward just for a while here, and hope Dad's having a good time and good food. And we might as well do it now, but we might regret it if we wait for a few years or whatever. But so let's go ahead and do it. Thank Tom for putting this kind of together here. But I don't have a lot to say. But anyway, this is a picture back in. I know it was before we moved to Oregon. We moved in '66, and Randy had a horse, and I didn't have a horse, so that's my horse. Dad said, well, our Graham, or somebody said, well, train a cow already. I didn't have money to buy that horse, but we had all the cows up there, so we picked one out and started training it with the calf and all that, and it was pretty neat, you know, you ride around town here. And, gotta do something up here. But we had a lot of fun with that. We did. We just ride through the woods and all over the place. We just had a good time back in the '60s. That was in the early '60s, I would say, someplace in '64.
Florence for a parade?
Yeah, we did take it down to a Labor Day parade one time in Florence, and I rode it down the Main Street. That's me. But anyway, yeah, just a good memory there on the farm and stuff. Yeah, and we moved to Oregon in 1966, and I had a real hard time with that move because we were guys from the woods up here, and they moved us down to the big city, and we tried to play football. Randy, we tried to play football with them city boys down there, you know. And it was like they were a lot way ahead of us. They were smarter or something. I don't know. And it's like we didn't fit in, and we don't want to go down there. And you kind of see that look there. We don't want to be here. But I say, we moved from this town down there, and we went to this country church when we were kids. And for me, I can look back at it now, and I can see the Lord's hand in that. To me, it's like a spiritual journey in a sense. I was raised, and I knew Scripture and stuff. I know Betty Berkland and others who started Knudsen and the church and stuff. But I went through a big time of rebellion when we moved. We got into a different church down there, and I was probably maybe the worst one. I don't know if someone would say it was, I guess, but I really gave my dad and mom lots of grief through them years, you know, in high school. And I got into drinking and running well down there. And I remember times when me and my dad, we'd get in arguments, we'd sit up. I remember at least two times we'd sit up and talk, sifting life things out, you know, talking about things, arguing, and till daylight the next morning. Two times I remember that, you know, and that's all through the night. And Dad had to get up and go. But he gave me that time, you know, and I'm really grateful for that. And as the time went on, I got out of high school and I took off and I went into welding school. And this ain't about me, but I mean, I'm just saying what my dad did for me when I was growing up. And eventually, it's like the Lord planted that seed in me when I was really young. I came back to it later, and my walk with the Lord now for the last 3 years has been just getting better and better. And thanks to guys like Charlie Springen here and different ones in the community that were part of that church back then, and encouragement and try to teach the kids the right way to go. But all through that time, my dad was just patient with us, and I know my mom had a big part of it. I know she was $1.50, at least half of it. So I just thank the Lord for my mom and dad and the family that we have and the health that we've been able to enjoy and really good time together. I just loaded. I guess I could just talk on and on, but my dad was there all along and been a good example of good work and ethics and stuff. So just another big thank you for you guys to always be here. Love you all, family, friends, and that. So thanks for coming down today.
When we first moved to Oregon, actually 7 miles south of Madison, but we lived in a big school district there, and different houses that they rented, different spots, and they built a house there too, and moved into that house in 1971, just outside of Oregon there. We made some good friends there. One of them's here, Jerry Brown, and that we met down there, but. So they built that house. My dad kept working for that company, and then in 1975 or 76, he took the state to be certified surveyor in the state of Wisconsin. So, up until that time, he had gone to school, was working in that engineering company and doing work. But at that time, then when he passed that test and got that license, he started his own business basically, and then he eventually moved back up north, and so this is the house they live in now, right off of 101 down there. He had come up and stayed with Graham actually in the house there for years and started doing jobs around here, surveying, and then they built this house and moved in 1992. So by that time, most of us had moved back up here. My brothers, one brother still lives down near Madison. But yeah, this is their 50th wedding anniversary. This year they'll be married 65 years on September 29th, so this is 15 years ago. And this is Dad's 80th birthday party, 10 years ago. This is Dad's last, 2 years ago, on his birthday, he gave up his license for surveying. So he officially retired 2 years ago on January 29th. This is his last day of work. He was doing some surveying down by the property that the town owns there, the dump, the gravel pit. And so my brother James was helping him that day and took a bunch of pictures of him. But yeah, this is his last day of work. And he had a list, I don't have it right here, but of all the guys that had helped him. I know even from town here, there's quite a few that had helped him. I mean, you don't have to have a license to help cut brush and carry tools and stuff. So, a couple of those boys did, but I know Bruce Mills, I know Mark Klein helped him, George Schwartz, Phil, yeah, and so that was good. I mean, for everybody that helped him, he did come away with a little better understanding of, how they determine where the lines are, because they're not all out there where you think they are, and there's different factors that play into that. But very interesting, and then you're also out in the woods, and so that was good. I think that's the last picture. So we wanted to leave time too, and I wanted to thank my dad too. We, different things through the years. My dad and his dad and probably his dad's dad. So when my wife and I built our house, I mean, he would just come down and, he was busy too, but he would grab a trowel or a hammer and without even saying much, just figure out where you're at and help for a while, and we always had questions, how to do this, and you show us how to do that. I mean, and I guess we kind of, I know for myself, you take that for granted, but not everybody has that opportunity, even that skill. And so we're just thankful for him to come alongside and help us with that. I think one of the sweetest memories, and this is when we were kids yet living down the street here before we moved, and my dad would milk cows, and then after that in the evening in surf season, he would go down to the sap pan, that's what we called it, where my grandfather had that big surf operation, and watch the fire, till whatever, 10 o'clock at night, and working all day, and sometimes he wouldn't even come home for supper. Hi, Jonathan. And Ma would pack a lunch, and she would say, "Hey, run this down to the sap pan to your dad," and she would put some of that bread in there, and she said, "Here, take some bread, you kids. Maybe he'll let you dip it in the surf," and that was as good as candy. I mean, there would always be an old tin cup hanging there on the nail, and to dip that bread, whatever kind of bread, in that hot syrup, it was good. So that was, I always remember that. It couldn't have been that old, but a lot of people in town, even with the maple syrup projects there, can remember helping and being a part of that, and that was my grandfather's. But my dad's been making syrup yet, and probably will this year if the snow ever melts or we get warm weather. So he's got a little operation in his yard, and he makes 20 or 30 gallons a year, and that's all the syrup we can eat. So and he gives a lot. I should say, he gives a lot of it away, because even my kids and grandkids, when they do come around, he'll send them away with a couple quarts of syrup. So we appreciate that. Is there? And George is here. I know George helped my dad surveying and doing different things there. Anybody else here that wants to say something? I know we had talked about it with our brothers, and some of them did, and that's fine. But if there's anybody here that has a memory or a thought, like I said, we've learned more about our dad in the last 2 weeks than we in a lot of areas. And part of it was we weren't paying attention, but just to look at his old pictures and ask him questions. Get things there. So, anybody have anything that they want to say, or here comes Phil. Phil has some. Phil.
Your dad, Norman, was one of the neatest men I ever got to meet, and he taught me a lot, and not just about surveying, about other things in life. Any Harrison, or anybody that likes him, or is related or cares for him, it's a really good celebration, because I'm really happy to ever meet a man like that. And we should all enjoy it, as long as he's here. And I'm really thankful that I'm with him.
Sure. Okay. I'm here. You guys want to come through? So that means James and Todd and Scott.